Let's all say a prayer tonight for NeoJesus, the biggest piece of shit that ever rode into this town, let's be honest. Because, folks, it's a Godwinson live news alert. We've been incubating this one for a while, since NeoJesus dropped the video. In fact, we've probably been incubating this longer than Sinead was incubating Andy Jr. That's how long we've been incubating this one. But tonight, we deliver Scorched Earth on NeoJesus. Piece of shit. Fuck you, NeoJesus, and fuck the horse you rode in on. Because what I hate about these Johnny-come-latelys, who don't come over here, learn the law, learn to speak the native tongue, and do 10 hours of research, and think that makes them a scholar, an old pro. Well, tonight I'm going to show them how it's done. Not only are we schooling NeoJesus, but we've got lessons from the archives. The old masters are coming together to show NeoJesus how it's done. Piece of shit. You might be thinking, why is he so angry at a man called NeoJesus? What's he done? Well, if the thumbnail didn't give you any sort of inkling as to what's coming up, he went and attacked the AVGN, James Rolfe, in the most deplorable, depraved, shameless way. That's all I can say. We're going to get into the entire takedown of James Rolfe, posted by NeoJesus. We're going to get into this man's whole raison d'etre for going after good old King James Rolfe. But first, we need to just clarify a few things about the AVGN, about James Rolfe. News alert, he's not as good as he used to be. News alert, mind parasite's got a hold of him, and he's not as good as he used to be. News alert, there's this fat man called Justin Silverman who likes Gengars that is in James's head now. News alert, folks. But that doesn't discredit nigh on a decade of absolute gold produced by the AVGN. Throughout his time on the internet, he's had contenders to his crown. There have been many who have decided to pop up out of nowhere, buy their video collections off eBay, Chris Bores, and call things a shitload of fuck in an attempt to become the next James Rolfe. Of late, however, there have been contenders to the crown that simply want to rape, fuck James in the skull, and throw him in a ditch. We've all seen the downfall of Cinemassacre videos. We've all seen the AVGN is an evil rapist. We've all seen them. But this one, it is noteworthy. Let's just, before we properly begin, let's talk about a phenomena that we see today. We talk about the people of the present in the space year 2022. With all of their flying cars and their TikToks and their STDs. We see all of them, right, try and retrofit figures of the past and say that they don't hold up to what they used to be. Maybe they were racist. Maybe they, I don't know, kicked a cat once. Maybe they don't hold up to the standards of today, the ever-shifting standards of the time. At a certain point, a great man becomes a great man of history, and no one can take that from them. They get a statue. You can't remove history, and you can't denigrate the figures of the past from the standards of today. Keep this in mind. Just keep this in mind as we begin this history lesson. So, NeoJesus, right? Now, this is a character all of himself. I think just prior to him deciding to go balls deep on the AVGN, he'd done some stuff on Red Letter Media. Now, I could give two shits about Red Letter Media because I never really held them as a paragon, as an idol, as a king. Certainly not antediluvian kings. But James Rolfe was probably the first of the antediluvian kings. The first of the internet game reviewers on YouTube that actually put thought, put effort, put a whole menagerie of creativity together in order to bring stuff that entertained the 10-year-old me. And I'm happy with the 10-year-old me having different tastes to the current me, right? I'm not going to apply the current me standards to the AVGN. So he uploads this video called NeoJesus, James Rolfe, AVGN, Times Forgotten Filmmaker. Right, so you might be thinking from the title, okay, Times Forgotten Filmmaker, what's he mean by this? What's he mean by this? You can see it's 48 minutes long. We're going to try and do as much of this as possible. We might have to stop halfway through to smash up the laptop. I've seen this once. It infuriated me. And over time, I've just been compiling my thoughts on the matter. We're going to play this now.
This would start out as like
so we've got a little montage of James, the AVGN,
piece of shit that he's surrounded himself with and devoted his life
to. Bit of a voiceover here.
He's just had enough at this
giving
point.
motive to his actions.
The creator had enough? I don't like them. Well, sometimes I feel that way because it's such a big sacrifice, and the toll that all these videos have taken on my life is just, you know, I can't even explain. But, like, the nerd finds out...
You might be thinking at the moment, this seems almost akin to an intro to something like Making a Murderer. Well, let's see where he goes with this.
End of this video, that it's something, all these bad games is something he can't live without. Just like the nerd is such a big part of my life, it's something that I could never give up. I love it.
Where do I even begin when it comes to James Rolfe?
Are we seeing this? Are we seeing this? Are we seeing this? This guy is going to try and paint James Rolfe as the next Ed Gein. That's where we are at this point. He smeared X's of his own blood onto photographs of people he's covered on his YouTube videos. And now he's smeared blood on a photo of James Rolfe. And he's also, by the way, I'm going to keep these in, he's also decided to lace this with as many adverts as possible. I just want you to witness this.
I mean, I thought I was taking on a big
This is
responsibility
NeoJesus,
when I
right?
decided to talk about Red Letter Media. But if you think it's hard trying to explain the complex role that RLM had in pioneering...
So, NeoJesus, what a badass. He's like Will Graham going in on the Hannibal Lecter that is James Rolfe, right? But he also has the voice of Toad McKinley.
Satirical internet movie reviews. Imagine how insane it is trying to explain how James Rolfe almost single-handedly pioneered the idea of internet reviews, period. From movies, to games, to books, to fucking board games. You name it, and James most likely has a history of talking about it, all while dragging us into his world as an indie filmmaker throughout the way. While James Rolfe has definitely changed a lot over the past 20 years that he's been making internet content, I mean, when you've been doing it that long, how could you not? One thing, though, is...
So already he invalidates his whole point before he gets in. But you're going to see just how much research he's put into this whole project. And you're going to see basically an attempt to pull down an antediluvian king in order to make your name doing a very similar thing. Without the talent, without the video game collection, without the charisma. If you're going to snatch the crown, at least attempt to rule.
has always remained consistent: James's love for filmmaking. Above all else, James is a filmmaker, and he views his reviews as just another way of making fun and interesting films. But as someone that makes indie films myself, how do I view James Rolfe?
How does he view James Rolfe? How does someone who makes films himself, how does he view James Rolfe? Now, I know we all want to hear his opinion. We're all hanging on his every word here, on how he will judge James Rolfe in this trial here.
As Red Letter Media for diverging too much
from their
indie film roots by spending...
Do you see this guy? NeoJesus, folks. NeoJesus. And it just doesn't end here. I only wish he'd stop the video at this point.
In this video, I'll attempt to dissect the long and incredibly diverse career of James Rolfe as a filmmaker and internet personality. And I'll be doing so primarily by focusing on his most iconic series, The Angry Video Game Nerd, which just recently had its 200th episode. But this isn't exactly going to be an easy task. I mean, the first episode of AVGN aired all the way back in 2004, back when I was a literal toddler.
When he was a literal toddler. No room to talk then, my friend. No room to talk. If you weren't there, man, you have nothing. You have nothing, sir. Good day. But this man who was a toddler, and I say man loosely, he was a toddler in the days of the AVGN. He's hopped onto Reddit, right, in an attempt to follow up his Red Letter Media review. He's hopped onto Reddit, see that there's a group of people that say that James isn't as good as he used to be, and has decided to make his name off the back of tearing down James Rolfe.
So needless to say, there's quite a lot to go over. And to be as thorough as possible, for this video that no one's going to watch, I decided to take on the personal task of watching the first 6 seasons of AVGN to break down the change, growth, and overall skill of James Rolfe as a filmmaker. So to everyone that keeps saying that I need to do more research for my videos, how's 20 hours of research sound for you?
Bullshit. 20 hours of research? Is that it? You need to go back to school, my friend. 20 hours of research? 20 hours of research. That's it. It's not enough. It simply isn't good enough, my friend. And what you've served here is the fruit that bears the lack of research. 20 hours. 20 hours of research. And that's enough to condemn James Rolfe and to pass judgment, to confine him to the electric chair, as he's about to do. 20 hours.
But before we dive into the AVGN, I think that it's important to talk a little bit about James before the nerd character. Prior to creating the first nerd episode, James had been making films ever since he...
So you see how he did that then? You see how he did that then, folks? He put films in quotes. Passive-aggressively. What a piece of shit. Every second of this takes my breath away.
A lot of his early films were little more than just home movies made on a VHS camera. It wasn't until he went to study film production at Philadelphia University of the Arts that he started producing...
So clearly he's just reading the Wikipedia. You know, the 20 hours of research I don't think extended this far.
...story of how he became interested in filmmaking. It wasn't until after graduating, however, that he would record a short one-off video that would change the course of his entire career. Filmed from a small bedroom at his parents' place, the classic review of Castlevania II Simon's Quest would plant the seeds of what would ultimately become the AVGN character. But at the time, it was just another short film project for James to add to his ever-growing filmography. Looking back, it's really nothing special, and it doesn't even resemble AVGN in its current state.
Well, you know what? Looking back at this video, it's really nothing special, I'm afraid. James Rolfe, at this point in time, was a pioneer. Pioneer. A Scot of the Antarctic. Really nothing special. Well, I'm sorry, but this little review here, that you're seeing a still frame of, had more of an impact than anything anything NeoJesus will ever do. I'm afraid, sir.
Since James never shows his face during the video. Its sequel, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde video, went the opposite direction and had James on camera for most of the time, and very little footage of the game was actually used. This was actually intended to be the last video in a series which at the time was titled Bad NES Games, and for 2 years it kinda was the finale. James didn't go on to create a third episode until 2 years later, and he only did so because so many of his friends requested it. The third video pretty much establishes the format that the nerd episodes would take from this point forward. This video combines the two previous videos and has James on camera for half the video and voiceover and gameplay for the other half. Other tropes that this episode would introduce include destroying the game cartridge, destroying the controller, comedically excessive outbursts of anger, and of course...
So we can clearly see he's either reading TV tropes, Encyclopedia Dramatica, or just the Reddit posts.
The Cinemassacre website. Prior to this, the first 2 episodes were only available
It's
on
fucking
VHS.
awful. How can this man talk about the downfall of James Rolfe when he wasn't even there? When he was literally in nappies, he was a toddler.
In James's own words, this is the point where
he only found out about James Rolfe 2 weeks ago.
Hold and focus on creating the new nerd videos for pretty much the next year. This would go on to have a tremendous impact on how the nerd episodes would grow and evolve during the early years.
So, by the end of the summer, all my focus on Cinemassacre projects have been put into Nintendo nerd videos. And even though they require a lot less filmmaking skills than what I usually do, ironically, they're bringing in a lot more fans.
Season 1 of AVGN contains 17 full-length episodes, as well as a few bonus videos, which were most likely attempts by James to continue figuring out the character. Some of these bonus videos are good, like the Console Wars video, but most of them are just mediocre, like the movie quote series where James finds a quote...
It's nice that, you know, we've got your opinion on the matter, NeoJesus. He's going to tell you, by the way, how James should have improved back in 2006. He's going to tell you, by the way, that James in 2006 should have bought a camera from 2022 and used that to make the videos. And that would have elevated them from beyond being just mediocre, right?
From a movie and just says a few things about why it's an interesting quote.
All right, good one. Movie quote of the week.
At the time, these reviews were probably some of the highest quality content on the internet.
Well, they certainly dwarf yours.
Things on the internet by itself was still a new concept. But to go as far as...
I mean, already you can see the charisma of James Rolfe being murdered, smothered by the voice of NeoJesus.
No one would have ever imagined doing something like this back then. Even if they had, it's unlikely that it could have been executed this well, because a lot of the film equipment that James had access to back then wasn't as easily accessible as it is today. His mic quality, at least in the voiceover sections, is really good for 2006 standards. And keep in mind, this was back when pretty much any condenser microphone would run you over $500. The camera he was using at the time, the Panasonic DVX-100, cost just under $4,000 back then, whereas nowadays you can find it used for less than $300. And guess what? Looks like shit. Yeah, needless to say, these early videos haven't aged well. Looking back, the flaws in these early videos are not only obvious, but plentiful. Firstly, they're all in...
Not only obvious, but plentiful. Do you reckon this guy looks at ancient artworks, monuments, and applies that slur to them? This man has no appreciation of history, of culture, of how things came to be. A real piece of shit. You can't just apply the standards of 2022 to 2006. Say they don't measure up because James didn't have a camera that you could buy in 2022. Sir.
Definition, which is at least excusable since HD didn't really exist yet. But because of the poor quality, most of the episodes are blurry, poorly color graded, and overall hard to look
That's
at.
Kino Dogme.
James hasn't yet refined his acting.
I'd rather have a blurry, poorly color graded video made with heart and charm than this soulless, what would you call it, soulless Wikipedia reading, interspersed with clips of James and his own ego, in order to prop himself up.
Third, and this is probably the most annoyingly obvious one, but the difference in mic quality between the times where James is on camera and the times where it's just voiceover is jarring, to say the least.
Oh, God forbid. God forbid the differences in mic quality. Oh, it's almost as though it was made in 2006. God forbid the differences in mic quality. You know, I'm getting faint just listening to it. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Had basically no sound.
This is a man who probably complains when a film is in black and white.
Whenever he's talking on camera. Not only that, but the two mics aren't EQ'd to match each other.
Oh dear.
The voiceover has a much stronger low end than the on-camera audio. Why he didn't take time to...
Heaven forbid. You know what? I think for that crime, we should just hang James from the rafters. I think we should just execute him now. Get a grip, sir. Get a grip.
It's not like EQing would have gotten
boy.
The horrible room echo, so maybe he just didn't see it as worth it. Most of these issues would continue even far beyond Season 1. In Season 2, James makes more of an effort...
Maybe they were a deliberate continuation. Boy.
Wow.
Son.
You get to play the game.
Maybe they were a deliberate continuation.
That's exactly what the...
In order to exacerbate the spirit of 2007 into future years.
However, the nerd episodes continue to get more and more complex and feature more of James's indie filmmaking skills. I don't think James gets enough credit for this, but he does a really good job of convincing the audience that he's actually playing the game as he talks, which is quite the creative deviation from the now typical, I already played the game and here's my thoughts on it format. His videos are more about capturing the experience of what it's like to actually play the game, and I think that's had a huge impact on how the character resonated with the audience. Season 1 also establishes a series of tropes that would...
He doesn't know, because he wasn't there. But he's read something that sounds convincing to him, and decided to read it aloud and pop in this video. Unfucking believable. He thinks that's why the nerd took off. Why not read a few books? Come back after more than 20 hours of research? Go back to school a bit? Time travel back to 2007 a bit? And then form an opinion. Worthless piece of shit.
Later becomes staples of the series. Episode 12 was the first Halloween-themed video in the series, and the first to feature his friend Mike Matei as Jason Voorhees. Not only would he continue to do a Halloween special of sorts pretty much every year for the rest of the
By the way,
but it also marks a
in the rankings of the Jokers, it's Jack Nicholson, Mark Hamill, Heath Ledger, Mike Matei, Jared Leto. I don't class the Joaquin Phoenix one as canonical, because he never fought Batman. I'm afraid.
Started treating the nerd videos more like short films with their own storylines, atmospheric lighting, various camera angles, and practical and VFX. This was most likely due to the fact that he wasn't working on any other films at the time, but was still having creative urges that ultimately wound up being funneled into the nerd series. This, however, proved to be a double-edged sword, as the more...
This is the judge, by the way. Passing sentence on James Rolfe. I've never seen more of an embodiment of everything I hate about the young people of today than I do in this image. This thing is everything I despise about the youth of humanity as it is today. People are saying the face of Gen Z. Yeah, you got it in one. But not just the face of Gen Z, but the opinions of Gen Z. The fact that a blurry video and some poor mic quality triggers him to the point where he has to make a 48-minute, 44-second video takedown on James Rolfe, judging him on the content he made in 2006. It says it all, folks. Thank God I'm closer to the grave than this man, because I don't want to be alive longer in a world where he is alive.
Effort he put into the nerd videos, the more the audience's expectations went up, and the more time he'd ultimately have to spend making them, which in turn would distract him from his other film projects. This might be why he decided to stop doing the nerd videos twice a month and instead just do them once a month.
If you spend
Again, you see this? It's laced with adverts, because this is all this is about. It's not about nostalgically reflecting on James Rolfe's legacy, no. It's about making a dime, taking down James Rolfe. Reading some Reddit posts on James Rolfe.
To gain popularity, especially once the series moved from the Cinemassacre website to YouTube, and once James partnered with Screw Attack. At the time, it was pretty much impossible to make money doing YouTube videos, especially reviews, so networks like Screw Attack established partnerships with creators to help them make money off of their content, in exchange for a small portion of the profits, as well as a consistent upload schedule.
He doesn't know for sure because he wasn't there,
would last from 2006 to 2011, and this would pretty much be the peak of the nerd's growth and popularity. This is also the point where James started to accept the idea of AVGN being his full-time job. He dedicated a whole room in his house to storing games and filming nerd episodes.
I refuse to turn on my pesky ad block, because I want you to see the soullessness at play here. I want you to be as enraged when a YouTube video advert pops up 3 times in 10 minutes as I am.
Which featured multiple actors and both parodied the movies that the games were based on, and the Christmas specials, which often featured other popular YouTubers at the time, and parodied things like A Christmas Carol and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. There were also things like the Nostalgia Critic crossover videos, and videos like the Mario 3 review, which featured a lot of digital VFX. The series was quickly becoming bigger than James himself, and as such, people like Mike were often helping him behind the scenes. The nerd episodes were also starting to dramatically shift in format. The early videos were a lot shorter and mostly just about the nerd's anger and hatred towards these old Nintendo games, but now the series was drifting...
Look, there was never any anger and hatred, right? He might have been called the angry video game nerd, but he wasn't a hateful man. James had nothing but love in his heart for what he was doing. The whole point was that whilst he might be calling a game a shitload of fuck, he genuinely had enough love to craft a video around it, to apply his filmmaking skills to a review of that video game. There was no hate. There was no hate in James's heart for this. He was a pioneer, an antediluvian king, and he didn't rule or reign with hatred in his heart. Learn the fucking law, boy.
Away from the angry part of the show's title and leaning more towards the nerd part of the show's title, with James almost taking the role of a gaming historian. Apart from the actual game reviews, there was an emphasis on talking about gaming history and the cultural significance of certain games and franchises. This would naturally increase the runtime of the nerd episodes and paint the series as more of an edutainment show about games and less of a comedy show about this angry game reviewer. The quality of the show itself also started to increase. While the show was still in standard definition, James would do a variety of different...
The third greatest Joker of all time, Mike Matei.
Cinematic. His on-screen presence also became a much bigger aspect of the show, with his reactions having a lot more diversity than just pure anger, and his acting becoming noticeably more natural. But there's something dramatically different about these newer episodes, apart from the production value. And it's not immediately noticeable, so if you're somebody that just started watching AVGN around this time, which is when most people started watching AVGN, then you might...
But not him. Not him, right? He was too busy on his 3DS playing Pokemon Ultra Moon, right? This is what this guy was doing when he was a child. And then a few years later, this kid decides to weigh in on James Rolfe. You know what, boy? Son? Maybe it's time to just go back to school before you weigh in, before you decide to cast judgment. Maybe it's time to learn to walk before you learn to crawl, my friend.
Might not even notice it, but nevertheless, it's still important. I'm talking about...
Johnny-come-latelys, I fucking hate them.
On the surface, it may seem like the comedy hasn't changed that much, if at all. But upon closer inspection, we see a very subtle shift in exactly where and how the comedy is being directed. And I think the best way to start is by showing this clip from a 2006...
By the way, this man's arbitration of what he decides comedy should be, and his totem pole of the comedy greatness, is... How I Met Your Mother, The Big Bang Theory, and some memes he's seen on 4chan. That to him is the apex of comedy from which all other work of great antediluvian kings should be judged against. Fuck you. Fuck you. Bazinga.
That he made about the creation of the nerd
piece of shit.
While in real life, I like the game to a certain extent, but in the review, I pretended that not only do I hate it, but I'm pissed off and I can't get over it. Like, why would anyone bother to complain about a game that's so old, and why would they still be playing it? Well, that's the whole joke.
At this point in time, it's very obvious that James intended for the nerd to be the overall butt of the joke throughout the entire series. The joke, so to speak, is that the nerd is a loser that has no life outside his hatred for games that made him angry as a child. No matter how mad he gets, no matter how many bad things he says about the game, it doesn't matter. Nothing will happen besides the nerd's perpetuated misery and the rest of the world's overall indifference. In a way, he's the ultimate parody of toxic nostalgia. The idea of
toxic nostalgia. The first of the Gen Z terms applied to James Rolfe. Toxic nostalgia? Toxic nostalgia. Toxic nostalgia, folks. The whole point, you're not supposed to... It was a character. The AVGN is a character. A fictional construct from the mind of James Rolfe in order to review video games that he liked, played, had experience with as a child. He then made them into little films, little reviews that entertained thousands, millions. They didn't make people indifferent. If they made people indifferent, James Rolfe would be a bum on the street. Instead, they entertained. They made people joyous. The citizens of James's realm were happy, had smiles on their faces, and they certainly didn't need the joke explaining to them.
Of continuing to stay mad about overall insignificant aspects of your childhood that made you angry. But as the nerd character progressed into being a more informative figure on video game history, the joke began to be that most of these games were poorly designed, shifting the butt of the joke from the nerd to the game designers. Instead of, wow, isn't it so funny that this guy is still mad about a game that came out over 20 years ago? What a loser, am I right? It's now more like, wow, aren't these game designers stupid? How could they possibly release a game this shitty? What were they thinking? Now, I'm not really one to say whether this shift in comedy was good or bad, or whether it made the episodes better.
No, you're not, boy.
Because I think that whole thing is completely subjective, and it really just depends on what your taste in comedy is like. Personally, I think that the nerd works...
Well, certainly James's taste in comedy is far superior to yours, son. When the apex of your comedy imaginings is a meme you've snatched from, what do they call it, Rick and Morty? I've never seen a frame of that, by the way. Never seen a fucking frame of that. But you can just tell that this guy has got this Rick and Morty merchandise all over his fucking bedroom. But comedy's subjective, right? And James is a peasant. A peasant. In comedic terms. Next to... what else do these fucking fools watch? Baby Shark? The Harry Potter Puppet Pals? It infuriates me, ladies and gentlemen, that we've got this Johnny-come-lately, fresh out of diapers, attempting to snatch the crown from James Rolfe. Even Chris Balls didn't have this much gall.
Very well as
At least Chris Balls waited till he was in his mid-30s to come after James.
And his character is still exaggerated enough to where it's very clear that the butt of the joke is still mostly him, and the fact that he's so bitter and resentful over things that are really not a big deal. But this shift in comedy does tell us one thing. This will not last. Eventually the nerd will lose the nostalgia factor for most of his audience. As he continues to talk about games he played as a child, he'll eventually run out of games that he actually remembers from that time, and he'll eventually run out of games to talk about from that era that anyone else actually remembers. As the series progresses, he talks about newer and newer games that try and keep the nostalgia factor going across multiple generations of gaming, but there's a drastic...
Well, surely that game there, is that Sonic the Hedgehog from 2006? I mean, that was when this guy was born. So, I mean, the nostalgia factor is there. That is an old game to you. You know, an Xbox 360 might as well be prehistoric to you, NeoJesus. So it sounds to me like he was keeping up a good thing, right? When he holds a NES game, or an Atari game, or a Mega Drive game, he might as well be holding a stone slab to you.
That he talks about games he grew up with, and the way that he talks about games that he experienced as an adult. Not only that, but as games get newer and newer, there starts to be more and more quality control, meaning the pool of genuinely bad games worth talking about is getting smaller and smaller.
Is that true, folks? Now, I know a lot of my audience plays video games, as indeed do I. Is it true that in the space year 2022, there are simply no bad video games? Because the quality of the video games is far superior. Because they've had many designers on them. Is that true, folks? Is it true? Or is it actually true that a lot of those video games from the past are better made than the shit we see today? Right? If anything, video games have gotten worse, folks.
At this point in time, it becomes clear that this eventually will stagnate, and that this joke can't possibly go on forever. It's hard to say at what point the nerd videos began to stagnate. If you were to ask me, I'd say that the Crazy Castle episode was the peak of James's production quality for the nerd episodes. Even the more complex episodes that would come out later, like the Ninja Gaiden episode and the Rob the Robot episode, didn't have nearly as much variety in the filmmaking techniques as the Crazy Castle episode.
This is Kino. Did you see that, folks? He has to interrupt the Kino with some hipster with a twirling mustache, right? Like some Victorian supervillain. In between the Crazy Castle review. Just so he can grift a dime. Shall we skip the ads, or shall we just keep this playing? This is a monument to how shameless this man is.
It's important to engineer Wix to be ridiculously over.
Now I don't want people to get the idea that I'm belittling James Rolfe for creative stagnation with this.
Who are you to belittle anyone, boy? Who are you? Son? Kid? I don't want people to think I'm belittling James Rolfe, bro. You're what? A fucking pimply-ass 18-year-old who has no eyesight, who can't grow facial hair, who seems to have some fucked up teeth there, and a nose he can't breathe from, and an unkempt hairstyle, and some faux brick. I mean, this is a poster of bricks, right? A poster of bricks. Who are you to belittle James Rolfe? No, son. We weren't under the impression that you were belittling James Rolfe. Fuck you.
Third series, because creative stagnation is just what happens when you're an artist. Especially when you've been working on the same project for a really long time.
You look like you've been drawn by retarded children.
I stagnate and struggle to find ways to make my future projects better than my previous projects. And I don't blame James for stagnating one bit, because at this point he had been working on the Nerd series for 5 years straight. But as is always the case with stagnation, there's always a source, and there's always a way of getting around it. When you're an artist, there's always opportunities to improve, whether it be a little or a lot. And there's always a way to get over a creative bump. But to see what James could have done better, we have to know more about his creative process with the nerd videos. And thankfully, he gave
Here we go, folks. This is probably the most infuriating part of all this.
Where he goes through the step-by-step process of making an AVGN episode. And honestly, it's not only amazing to see just how much effort he's putting into these videos, it's overall an entertaining video as well, since he formats it almost like a documentary and implements a lot of his filmmaking knowledge in this video alone. That said, this video also reveals something about James that makes me believe that despite this video being over 10 years old now and him not making an updated version, that he's not very good at adapting his filmmaking techniques to the modern era in order to reduce the amount of time and effort that it takes for him to make nerd.
I'm sorry, folks, but the true antediluvian kings don't need to adapt their filmmaking techniques to the modern era. The fact we're not doing this on OBS, with TTS flashing through every 5 seconds, we don't need to carry through or evolve our filmmaking techniques in order to make a point. Why change anything? Why fix something that ain't broken? Kino Dogme 2007 completely skirts over this guy's head. I mean, holy fuck, folks. Should we really have James Rolfe, a zombie version of himself, streaming on OBS? Shouting Metica Masochist for $100? No. No. James Rolfe is an artist with integrity that has decided to carry through his techniques into this space year, and he feels no shame. He feels no indignity doing that. He's an artist delivering art. It's his vision, his creative work. The fact that he carries on the spirit of 2007 is props to the man. Unlike this child trying to school me on James Rolfe.
Videos, and overall decrease the likelihood of burnout. To start with, at the time this video was made, he was still recording all the game footage on a DVD recorder.
Based.
Which, even though this was 2011 and capture cards weren't as prominent as they are now, they still existed, and seeing as how he spent over 3,000...
He should have got a capture card, guys. He should have got a capture card. No, fuck that. I'd rather James spend more time crafting the videos using a DVD player where you could really tell his heart was in it. There was a method, a filmmaking process, than I would him just ripping it off a video capture memory stick. Fuck that. Fuck that.
$1,000 on his camera.
Used, it was about $3,000 with batteries and everything.
Spending about $700 on a capture card, which is about what they would have cost at the time, seems like a good investment if it means getting higher quality game footage.
It wasn't about higher quality game footage. It was about getting stuff in an analog format that you recorded yourself personally, that you felt a connection to the technology. It wasn't about a capture card.
With a pretty high quality Leica zoom lens that was often used in independent broadcast media at the time, and was also common to see in a lot of film universities. It's actually the camera I shot my very first short film on. James most likely learned
congratulations, buddy. Well done. Well done, you shot a short film on that camera. Maybe you can send it in a fucking TARDIS back to 2006 for James Rolfe to use. Maybe then he'd be good enough for you.
Which was essentially the same camera, but in addition to being able to record standard definition on DVX tape, it could now also record high definition on P2 cards. James, however, didn't know this. James didn't do enough research on this camera, and he believed...
Oh, James didn't do enough research. James didn't do enough research, is that right? Is that right? Gotcha. James didn't do enough research. But after 20 hours, you're going to cast aspersions on this man and sentence him to the electric chair. Yeah, gotcha, buddy. I understand perfectly.
That he would be able to record high-definition video onto the DVX tape. So rather than buying more of the expensive P2 cards to record with, James opted instead to buy more of the less expensive tapes and didn't discover until later that he couldn't record high definition. He admitted to making this mistake in this 2019 video where he talks about the different cameras.
Is it really a mistake, though? Is it really a mistake? Because James clearly loves this camera. He clearly feels a connection to this camera. Clearly he feels that his artistic integrity can be channeled through this camera. Right? I'm going to make a little confession about every single video I've ever created. The edited ones, right? They were all made. All of them were made on a shitty Samsung Galaxy S6. I always edit the videos on a phone. Always. 110% of the time. The most recent ones I've recorded and edited on an iPhone 7. Do you know why? Do you know why I do this? Do you know why? When it's harder to do that, by the way. It's a lot harder to do that than it would be if I just downloaded Sony Vegas or Premiere Pro or Final Cut and did the videos that way. Do you know why I make them on a phone? Because I feel more of a connection to the video I'm making, to the creative vision I'm putting out. You can speak to anyone who's ever seen me edit. You can speak to anyone who's ever seen me edit. I mean, PPP can testify to this, because I made videos when I was there, and all of them were made on that shitty mobile phone. There's soul in it. Soul. I liken it to being one of the old filmmakers, right? Where you were cutting and splicing the film yourself. The reason why James didn't decide to go to fucking 2022 and buy a camera there and bring it back to 2006 is because he fucking loves this camera. It did the job. It accurately portrayed his nostalgia, however toxic that may be to NeoJesus, right? But it accurately reflected a moment in history that James wanted to share with all of us at home. It had heart, it had soul. It was just better.
Over the years.
So
Why should James film everything in 4K? What the fuck?
So in case the P2 cards don't work out that great, so I kind of have, I have two options, right? Nope, this camera only shoots HD on the P2 cards.
This mistake later led to a constant change in the aspect ratio of the nerd episode.
Oh dear,
Most episodes being
not a
shot
change in the
in
aspect ratio.
4:3, but certain ones like Winter Games and Star Wars were shot in the 5:4 aspect ratio. It wasn't until episode 100 when the series finally went full HD. Now I'm not bringing this up.
You know what, if I could stream from this mobile phone in 4:3, I would. 4:3 is the most based of all the aspect ratios. Unfortunately, it doesn't let me do that. But if I had the option to, I absolutely would stream in 4:3 because I know it would repel insects like you, boy. If I could stream in 360p and not be automatically upscaled to whatever this is, I would do so. I'd do it in 144p to automatically repel the audience that I don't want. An audience of faggots like yourself. Absolute degenerates who have no comprehension of anything, but seek to cast aspersions on the past.
To make fun of or in any way berate James, because what this all really boils down to is just a simple mistake that I'm sure any filmmaker could have made. In fact, the only real reason I bring it up at all is because it's somewhat related to my next point, which is just what the indie film scene was like in the early 2010s when he bought this camera. Now, at the time that all this was going on, I was literally a 10-year-old and had no direct exposure to the world of indie filmmaking. But
let me just impart something to you then, son. You've got no direct exposure of the world as it is now. You're streaming from a bedroom that's barely lit, with a poster of bricks behind you. You look like you haven't stepped outside the house since you were 10. You were born in 2000. You were born in 2000. And you seek to cast aspersions. You haven't even got a hair on your chest, lad. But you're going to come after James Rolfe? You're going to pretend that you're a filmmaker?
Came about in the early 2010s, and just how much of that was thanks to indie filmmakers that shot on digital because shooting on film was too expensive. And one thing that I know had a huge impact on digital filmmaking was the advent of Canon and Nikon's entry-level DSLRs, with the one that I'd argue had the most impact being the Canon 5D Mark II, which launched in November of 2008, and was the first digital camera to shoot in HD with a 35mm film equivalent. And rather than using the expensive P2 cards, it opted for the much cheaper CF cards that allowed for cinematic...
By the way, does anyone give a fuck? Does anyone give a fuck that this guy has learned something on his film course at his university and is trying to shoehorn it into a James Rolfe review? Does anyone give a fuck?
Budget Hollywood productions, and at the time of release it cost roughly $500 less than the Panasonic that James wound up getting. And that was back in 2008. By the time James upgraded to HD in 2011, Canon and Nikon had already rolled out several even cheaper DSLRs that shot in HD, like the T2.
But the thing is, James didn't want a DSLR.
The DSLR revolution.
It wasn't about a DSLR.
In indie filmmaking.
It wasn't about making content that looked like this, with faux, what do you call this, lens blur? Shallow focus, deep focus, whatever the fuck you'd call this. It wasn't about that. It was about making content with heart and soul.
People that couldn't afford to shoot on film could still produce footage that looked somewhat like 35mm. This revolution would be so impactful that DSLRs would even be used on award-winning TV shows.
James should have used a DSLR, guys.
Season 6 finale shot on the 5D Mark II in 2010, and Wilfred, which was shot entirely
Depth of field,
on
that's right, okay.
DSLRs in 2011. Not to mention, DSLRs would later
Wilfred.
become the standard for most...
James should have just made Wilfred, guys, and this Casey Neistat Goblin Man videos. That's what he should have made. And not entertained an audience of millions of future antediluvian kings. I guarantee you every single one who makes really good content in this sphere, in this sector, all of us grew up watching James Rolfe.
Internet content
and not this Goblin Man.
My point here is that James should have done a bit more research on the wide variety of...
Oh, James should have done more research. Well, maybe you should have done some more research, boy.
He opted for a Panasonic camera that wasn't even well suited for the type of content that he was doing, simply because it was a brand and a type of camera that he was familiar with and wouldn't have to put much effort into learning how to operate.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
That, he didn't even research into whether or not he could...
This was the tool of an antediluvian king. He didn't need fancy new technologies to make his point or to entertain thousands.
One of the last things I noticed about this behind-the-scenes video is that James records all of his voiceover lines first before filming the on-camera segment.
Oh dear, what a great crime coming up.
Over at his computer using a Samson mic going into an Alesis Multimix 8. And to begin with, I don't think I need to be the one to say that this setup is incredibly outdated even for 2010. He's not even mixing his audio on high-quality headphones or studio monitors. He's just...
I'm sorry, guys, but another confession to make. I don't mix my audio using professional studio mics and professional studio monitors. The whole point is if you can make the point and deliver the artistic representation of what you've got in your head with the most primitive of technologies, that probably makes a greater artist, does it not? I've got more respect for James doing it off the fly and doing it with the old techniques and tools that he learned back in film school. Why fix something that ain't broke? He shouldn't have got a DSLR. He shouldn't have got a Yeti Snowball microphone. Who gives a shit?
Using a pair of shitty computer speakers, so he likely isn't hearing his audio as accurately as he should for adding things like compression and EQ. It's also a bit strange to see him recording audio with a $50 Samson mic and a mixer when condenser
It's not strange, it's based.
For voiceover work, and cheap condenser mics like the Blue Spark were beginning to become readily available in the early 2010s. On top of that, audio interfaces like the Focusrite Sapphire Pro 14 were also starting to become the industry standard for analog to digital converters for home recording.
Is this really, by the way, the generation of fanboys that Red Letter Media have birthed? Where it's not about the heart and soul of the film, the experience that the film or the video takes you on, the journey, how it affects you, how it changes your life. No, it's about how it's technologically compiled. Is that really the level of fanboy that has been spawned from Red Letter Media? Everything is sort of pseudo and ironic and detached from the actual experience that we're going on the journey. I mean, holy fucking shit, folks. Do you know what? I take great joy going back and watching stuff like, I don't know, His Girl Friday, Bringing Up Baby, those old Cary Grant films. Arsenic and Old Lace. I can sit there, be taken on a wild ride, on a journey. I can sit there and watch something like To Have and Have Not, right? The old Howard Hawks film with Humphrey Bogart. And I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, it's in black and white, I refuse to watch it. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, the sound quality is horrendous, I refuse to watch this. Oh, the music's outdated, I refuse to watch this. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit there and watch The Searchers and worry about the kind of man that John Wayne was in private. No. I could give two shits. I could give two shits about the notion that we should have handed Howard Hawks, John Ford, Sam Peckinpah, a DSLR from 2011, and some studio noise compression that they could mix the sound with. I could give two fucks. I appreciate it more that they were using the tools of their day and the tools that they learned, right, in order to deliver the content that they wanted to make.
To capture much higher quality voiceover than he was at the time. The introduction of a preamp like the vintage Golden Age Pre-73 would have provided an additional 3 to 6 decibels of noiseless gain, which would have helped him prevent audio peaking while
Orson Welles should have just used a DSLR
which was becoming more and more popular
for Touch of Evil.
Filmmaking scene.
That would have made it better.
That he learned to use when he was in school. James just has a habit of not wanting to travel outside of his comfort zone when it comes to filmmaking techniques, even if it winds up working to his detriment. Because not only did this outdated mic setup lead to lower quality voiceover, it also slowed James down. In all actuality, James wouldn't have even needed to upgrade his recording setup in order to improve his workflow, because James doesn't even need to record his audio this way. In order to explain what I mean here, I'm going to reveal a little secret about how I record.
Here we go,
videos.
folks. By the way, this is how a Gen Z child in nappies does it. And you're going to learn from this high, great tier filmmaker just exactly how it's done and how James should have done it, right? Are you ready for this? Are you ready to be learned and schooled by this literal child?
Record my videos, I record both the on-screen segments and my voiceover segments at the same time. Even when I'm not on camera, I'm still using the same recording setup that I do when I am on camera, rather than going to a separate voice recording setup. And even though this is incredibly unprofessional and not at all how you would do it on an actual film production, I do this for two good reasons: audio consistency and to conserve time. When I record the voice...
The conserved time is probably his most important part, because he attempts to shit out these videos, reading aloud James's wiki and the Red Letter Media wiki, the Reddit posts that have been made on them. Do it in the shortest amount of time so he can lace whatever video he shits out with as many adverts as possible.
Voiceover segments using the same...
That's right, that is a Hello Kitty t-shirt he's wearing.
The difference in tone between the two. This way I maintain the same sonic atmosphere and volume all the way through, which I believe is less distracting for the viewer. Now, in the early days, this wasn't really an option for James, since the room tone was so bad that all the on-screen segments had that awful echo around them. So unless he wanted the entire video to sound like that, he had to go to a second mic. But now that his on-camera audio sounds a lot better...
We know that most NES games were targeted towards young boys.
Realistically, he would be able to get away with recording videos this way. The other reason I record this way is because I save time by not having to do 2 separate recording sessions. I feel like if James...
Well, how about you took the fucking time, son? How about you took the fucking time? Put some heart and soul into the content you're making. How about you actually craft the creative vision you're putting out into the world? We need to conserve time. Conserve time? I've got greater respect for James Rolfe, who decided to arduously labour on his Batman review, than I do for you, who spent all of 20 hours of research on James Rolfe, probably about 2 hours compiling this video, in a Hello Kitty t-shirt, in front of a poster of bricks, where you egotistically decide to shoehorn in the 10 minutes you've been on this film course and apply it to James Rolfe. No respect, boy. Kid.
This way, it would have been highly beneficial since he theoretically would have been able to save time as well. And the final product would have overall been better since the
would it really?
audio was recorded using a condenser boom mic, and the dynamic mic used for the voiceover doesn't produce the same sonic atmosphere that is associated with...
Get it, guys. He said Sonic, so therefore the hedgehog has to be on screen at all times. It's the third time he's done that, by the way.
Or at the very least had another boom mic that would be used just for voiceover. Now, since this video came out, James has changed a lot about the way that he makes videos. But even when he is integrating new filmmaking techniques, he's always doing so late in the game that it honestly just reaffirms my belief about him being stuck in his film school ways.
He's stuck in 2007. James is here to bring the Kino Dogma 2007 into the new space year of 2022, 2023, 2024. Of course he's going to be the slowest one there and the most resistant to these new advances in the filmmaking world. It's James fucking Rolfe. Like, he built his whole thing around being nostalgic for the things of the past. For being an antediluvian king, quite literally. James clearly isn't at the launch of every new iPhone. He's clearly not buying every new latest bit of technology. He's happy with this VHS DVD combi. And you know what? Massive respect to the man. Absolute highest level of respect to James Rolfe for that. People are saying James isn't a consumer. That's right. That's right. And you know what? Him not being a consumer has made him more artistically, what would you call it? He has more artistic integrity for that. He's essentially the Vincent van Gogh of our times.
Like, even in the 2016 Nerd Room tour, he's still recording the game footage with a DVD recorder.
Based.
It wasn't until the 2021 Nerd Room tour that James revealed that he had switched to recording straight to a PC or laptop. He also revealed that he started recording the on-camera sections and the voiceover together in one go. But he's still using two different mics, with one going into the camera and one going into a Tascam recorder. But what's really the point of using two mics when they're less than 6 feet away from each other and meant to be tone-matched anyway? Seems like just an extra mic and recorder to have to worry about to me. Not only that, but even when James upgraded his camera again, he went with another Panasonic E&G camera, the AF100. Which, while this is a solid camera, it has a tiny Micro Four Thirds sensor that doesn't produce footage as cinematic as some of the other cameras that were available to him at the time.
Oh dear. Oh dear. He didn't buy a camera that would produce footage as cinematic as other cameras that were available at the time. Is anyone else dumbfounded? You know what? How about you just keep your opinions to yourself, boy? Son? Lad? Just because something is here today doesn't mean it's automatically better than what's come before it. Reality check. Maybe someone's never told you that. Maybe someone's never imparted that life lesson onto you in your 18 years of life. Maybe you need to take a seat, reflect on that absolutely world-shattering bit of life advice there. Or maybe you've got a few years before you can weigh in on James Rolfe, right? Maybe you've just got a few more years before you can get to the table and discuss the big boy matters. You can sit at the table and break bread with the real men like James Rolfe.
And back in 2012, there weren't many cinema lenses being made for Micro Four Thirds cameras. Only now are we starting to see that sort of thing with the new Mica cinema lenses. And you'd think that a filmmaker like James would be discouraged from buying a camera that doesn't give him the ability to use cinema lenses, which have been the industry standard pretty much since the dawn of cinema. But in all honesty, I don't even think James took any of that into account, because all he knew is that Panasonic cameras are what he's used to. His past two cameras didn't even have interchangeable...
that's exactly it, NeoJesus. That's exactly it. I mean, he's just using things he's used to because he has a connection with them. I mean, that's the reality of it, NeoJesus. It's James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. I'm not expecting him to skydive in travel vlogs in 4K. I'm not expecting him to run around with a DSLR camera. I'm not expecting him to stand in front of a brick wall poster in a Hello Kitty t-shirt and read aloud his script in one take. I'm expecting him to be James Rolfe. I'm expecting him to be the angry video game nerd. I'm expecting him to keep evoking memories of my childhood in order to entertain me and make me feel as I did when I was first watching the nerd content. Holy fucking shit. This guy has been on this film course for about 10 minutes and knows it all right. Oh, he really knows it all.
Lenses. Instead, the lens was built in, so I imagine he didn't even care what sort of options he'd have for lenses, just so long as it was a camera that he could figure out how to use easily. James has recently gotten a Panasonic GH5 so he can eventually start shooting in 4K, but he still primarily uses the AF100, and the nerd episodes are still shot in 1080p rather than shot in 4K and then downscaled to 10.
We're done. We're done with NeoJesus. NeoJesus can quite literally go fuck himself and the horse he rode in on. He probably does anyway. Who knows what these fucking Gen Z, toothless, facial hairless, Rick and Morty loving, Pickle Rick loving cunts do in their spare time. But quite frankly, I've had enough. I've had more than my fair share of children trying to tell me what Kino Dogme 2007 is. Kino Dogme 2007. It's an artistic vision. A community of creators, past and present, who want to keep the spirit of 2007 alive. It's about being free-forming. It's about not caring whether it's in the most professional format. It's about not caring whether your audio's fine, whether the lighting's good, whether you're filming it on a DSLR. No. It's about being able to deliver a rant, deliver a takedown, convey an artistic vision, using those tools that the antediluvian kings showed us to use. They showed us the tools that we should use. It's not about having 7 cameras on me and interspersing myself in various different forms with depth of field. No! If the antediluvian kings taught me anything, it's that no matter what format the video is in, as long as it's entertaining, as long as the entertainment's there, just like in the old days, just like in 2007, it sure as shit don't matter. Because I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, back in 2007, cinema was highly advanced, but YouTube was just like this, just exactly like this. The whole point of YouTube was this. Not OBS, not 4K resolutions. It wasn't about buying the latest camera. It was about picking up any old shitty webcam, any old shitty mic, and doing it live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. That's the ethos. That's Kino Dogme 2007. And you know what? This Johnny-come-lately, this NeoJesus fellow, he clearly misunderstood everything that he was talking about. Clearly there was an ego on the man, where he wanted to reinsert everything he's learned on his 10 minutes on this film course, right? But he's emblematic of everything that the younger generation is today. He's emblematic of the kids who refuse to watch black and white movies, of the kids who refuse to play a game older than a PS4 game. He's emblematic of everything I despise. He's a symbol of what's new and shiny today must therefore be superior to everything that's gone before it. You're hearing here a sad rendition of Numa Numa. And there hasn't been a song created since Numa Numa that matches Numa Numa. For real. For real. Just because Taylor Swift has released a song today, it doesn't mean that Numa Numa should go in the bin. Antediluvian kings. There was a lot of wisdom in those antediluvian kings. And probably a great bit of wisdom was imparted when Ace Salieri decided to review Sour Apple. Now, there was method to the madness here, because we wanted to show you just exactly how you do a takedown, you do a scorched earth takedown of an internet video game reviewer, right? I wanted to show you two levels: shit hot garbage like NeoJesus, and true 10 out of 10 nectar and kino, like we're about to see with Asa reviewing Sour Apple. Because don't just take my word for it. We're going to use the antediluvian king to also impart this lesson. So, I'm going to take you now into the Temple of the King. Once upon a time, folks, there was an internet reviewer called Sour Apple. Now, he was British, and he decided to go on the that guy with the glasses, I'm an invented, wacky character route, and review any old shit. And we're about to hear the tolling of the Great Black Bell. Sour Apple's whole gimmick wasn't that he would just review a video game or a comic book or anything niche. He would review anything. I fucking love this song, by the way. We've had to use the cover, but the original one by Rainbow is truly fantastic. Because the whole point of this stream is to take you into the Temple of the King. Show you how it's really done by an old master. Alright, let's get him up then, shall we? So, Sour Apple had quite a brief but also quite distinct reign. I think at the point where Ace Salieri reviewed him, he was on about 100 views a video, you know, which still wasn't much even back then.
Hello, dear viewer.
Right. So, this is Ace Salieri at the top of reviewing a review of 26, I believe. It's called Bobbing for Tasteless Apples. You might be thinking, why is he dressed this way? All will become apparent. All will become apparent as we continue. And we shake the trembling hand in the Temple of the King. This is how you do it, son, boy, lad. This is how it's done, my friend.
Hello, dear viewer. You know what? Today I had an epiphany. I don't need to have any talent or be be special in any way or even know jack shit about any subject at all in order to be a good reviewer on YouTube. All I need to do is find the most ridiculous fucking wig I can find, rasp my voice up a little, wave my arms around a lot, put an avocado down my pants, and dress in similarly colored looking random crap I find around the house. The shittier and cheaper looking, the better.
I want you to take note, NeoJesus, how he doesn't need a poster of bricks in the background, how he doesn't need a Hello Kitty shirt, how he doesn't need a fancy-ass 4K DSLR and some microphone to make his point. This antediluvian king purely needs charisma. A space big enough for him to stand in and perform his shenanigans and antics. This space appears to be his sitting room or his kitchen, right? This is Kino Dogme 2007. This is how it's done, lad.
And I could be a YouTube sensation. Hollywood, why aren't you returning my calls? Anyhow, yeah. Today's subject is sour apple.
Right. King of Fighters intro. Where's this going, folks? Who is Sour Apple? I know what's coming. And this is truly, this, in my opinion, is Ace Salieri's best ever video. I've watched this about 100 times over the years. But this is how it's done. You do your intros on Microsoft Paint. That's how it's fucking done, folks.
So, you're probably wondering, just who the hell is this sour apple guy anyway? To be honest, I still don't know, even after my viewers asked me to check him out.
Before we just get into that, I'm going to leave it on a slight cliffhanger because I need to get a vape. So I'm just going to rest this here and leave you all with the notion of who is Sour Apple? Who was Sour Apple? What could Sour Apple possibly be? And what has caused Asa to start this with a comedy sketch of a guy in a wig charlatanizing the idea of internet reviews? I'm just going to leave that with you whilst I find another vape. So behind the scenes, this blue one ran out, but we've got a red one now. Let's continue.
Alright, so here's his channel, and what the hell is that thing? Is that supposed to be Oscar the Grouch's heart ripped right out of his chest? Is it a digested Pac-Man seen from the inside of the ghosts via X-ray? Is it one of Incredible Hulk's testicles? No, sadly, this is his logo. I guess he must have asked a kindergartner to draw Slimer hawking a loogie for him, and that's what he got. But I digress. This extremely popular reviewer rivals NC-17's numbers, as you can see here.
Now, at the time, people were sort of clutching their pearls at Ace Salieri going at Sour Apple because he only had 48 subscribers and this was really a guy kicking down. But the shamelessness on display with Sour Apple was enough for coverage.
And what does he review? Well, it's in the lyrics to his very memorable and catchy theme song that he himself wrote.
Review anything.
Keep away from the octopus tentacles, folks.
Wait, you say you don't like his theme song? Well, after only a month of being in business, he changed it to his new and improved theme. Here I am, buying the MP3. And now that he's been doing his show for a whopping 4 months so far, he already wants you to make his next thing.
4 months? This guy was barely out of internet reviewer school before Asa came for him.
Hello, chums. It's me, Sam.
Yeah, he's an Anglo. He's an Anglo.
And I need your help.
Hello, chums. 'Tis I, Sour Apple.
I don't want to have the same theme song all the time. So, I would like you to try out a theme song for me.
Hello again. It's me, guy you've never heard of, host of show you never watched. Of course you've never heard of me, but I want you to make music for me. Because clearly I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I'm lazy, and I want you to make music for me. Capiche?
That's right. What I'd like you to do is do a fitted response of a song.
Now, this is when I knew that Kraut's voice was fake, because Kraut sounds like Sour Apple, right? A lot of people back in the day used to say Kraut puts on a fake accent. Now, I've heard Kraut behind the scenes. He sounds like Adolf Hitler. It's pure Germany, pure Germanic, right? But Kraut sounds like Sour Apple for real, folks. I can't turn it up. This was literally recorded with the Kino Dogme tools of 2007, I'm afraid.
What lyrics? I want to review octopus tentacles.
King! Observe peasants, a king in motion. I'm having quite a good time.
Meaningful lyrics.
And it'll be judged by musicians, music students, and myself.
Dude, smoking notes.
So if you've just joined us, dear viewer, Ace is picking apart the songwriting competition that Sour Apple put out, where he threw open the gates for all and sundry to compose a theme tune for the new Sour Apple reviews, where he reviews anything. Freedom to criticize octopus tentacles. And he's making sick burns based upon that.
Come on, you and your tone-deaf buddies who couldn't make your own theme song think you have the capacity to judge others on musical ability? Holy crap, you guys are arrogant.
And then that song will play at the opening of future episodes of Review Anything. So grab your keyboards, slap that bass, and show
It's so autistic.
Dude, who do you think you are? Elton John? If anyone submits an entry for your contest, I will personally recreate the Pony Island song.
Yeah, for real, Proto Squire. You know what, Squire? Sour Apple was going through my head the whole time you were doing the Squire bit. Confession. I just didn't have the heart to tell you, my friend.
So many of my viewers seem to want. I guess he's hosting this contest because he realized, much like anyone with ears does, that his songs so far are, well, they're like a kid does with their birthday cake.
No half measures.
But enough of ripping on this guy's sense of self-importance and his music. What kind of knowledge does this guy bring to the table?
Exploitation film.
I'm hoping, by the way, if you're a keen viewer, if you've been watching closely this past live stream, you're seeing the parallels with Sour Apple and NeoJesus.
Inspired the marketing and artistic approach to later mainstream methods. In fact, it's a popular craze right now in Hollywood for them to recreate the aesthetics of exploitation films.
So, because Quentin Tarantino has a hard-on for old 70s B-movies, suddenly it's an extremely popular thing in Hollywood to recreate this specific style? Exploitation film is technically anything low-budget that relies heavily on its gimmick, and not just the style. It's a broad term. You should be more specific with your examples.
Exploitation filmmaking is part of cinema history. Without exploitation film, people today most likely would to direct a scene with sexual nature or a scene full of graphic violence.
Yeah, any director worth their salt would have realized him.
But I just want you to pay attention to the speech bubble that Ace Salieri's decided to superimpose on MS Paint. It's just the sickest of burns. Full scorched earth on Sour Apple. Sour Apple was minutes out of the womb before Asa decided to take him down as an internet reviewer.
Eventually, that it would put asses in seats to apply these ideas to their movies. It's not like it was some awesome invention that might never have seen the light of day that some avant-garde genius B-film directors came up with suddenly. Your entire intro to your Game of Death video is nothing but a bunch of hot air that sounds like there's a point to that until you actually study what's being said. So he sounds like he wants to come off as a guy who has a new and keen view on film, but like many reviewers out there permeating YouTube, he's just another dude in a cheesy costume who saw the potential internet dollars that this awesome reviewing idea could...
Yeah, I think Sour Apple killed himself.
Hey,
for real.
I can do that too.
No great loss, by the way.
I also want to address his gimmick real quick. Now, this is a completely not random thing here, I'm sure you realize. He clearly has a preference for reviews of TV cartoons, as you can see from this list I compiled of all his episodes thus.
So as you can see, Ace is about to call him out on his review anything gimmick, right? So the reviewing anything gimmick seems to extend to cartoons of the past. So maybe you can see a common theme here before I spell it out for you. So review anything, right? You'd think he'd be reviewing, I don't know, rocket ships from Mars and shit like that. He'd be reviewing... I don't know, Walmarts in fucking cars, in, I don't know, clothes, or whatever. Review anything. The possibilities are endless, but maybe you can see a common theme here. So, Sour Apple's episode list. 1, Disney's Recess. 2, Jimmy Neutron. 3, Rugrats. 4, Jim Carrey films. 5, Angela Anaconda. 6, The Sims 2. 7, It's a Mystery. 8, I don't even know what that is. UBOS. 9, Lloyd in Space. Maybe you can see a common theme here with the review anything here. 10, Game of Death. You know, it's a big risk. It's a big jump. Game of Death? Recess, Rugrats, Game of Death. Holy fuck. 11, Dinosaurs. And then 12, Mona the Vampire.
Yeah, he reviewed a movie once or twice, but the emphasis has mostly been on cartoons. His review-o-matic gimmick is just there really for show. You want to know what would have been a...
His review-o-matic gimmick is just there merely for show. Don't promise something you can't deliver, Sour Apple. Or else you'll be called out on your bullshit, I'm afraid.
Better way to prove you really do review anything? Well, how about this idea?
Hello, insignificant retarded reviewer here again. You know, I asked all 3 of my viewers to give me 10 topics that I could choose at random to talk about in my next review. Now, these were the topics you chose as per my instructions.
This is savage.
All right, so these were the top 10 topics that were left in my comics. Casio keyboards, my cholecystectomy, the recent play I was in, melatonin, Angry Birds coloring books, this dead squirrel, training DVDs, Kellogg's low-fat granola, RPG dice, and graham cracker.
Truly a range of things. Truly capitalizing on the review anything, review-o-matic gimmick that's been presented by Sour Apple. You know, he didn't lay out an array of cartoons and Game of Death, bizarrely. No, we've got granola, a colonoscopy, a play he was in, a dead squirrel and some graham crackers.
Well, graham cracker crumbs.
Crumbs. Some RPG dice.
Of course, this must be done at random because I review anything. So we have a deck of cards over here. Now, to ensure that no cheating happens, we are going to mix the cards up nice and well. And now we're going to choose one card, and the highest card wins, and that's...
What's it going to be, folks? Right, shall we go through the options? Is it going to be a Casio keyboard, some RPG dice, an Angry Birds calendar, a colonoscopy, a play he was in, graham crackers,
what I'm going to review.
granola?
Casio has a 10. Cholecystectomy, king, jack, melatonin. So far, so good.
The dead squirrel.
Looks like I'm going to be talking about my operation.
So yeah, Asa did have a colonoscopy. He did have this procedure take place.
And the winner is my cholecystectomy. Now, okay. I shall now review this one, which was completely chosen at random, as you can see. It was great. End of review.
Oh, fuck.
Another way you can ensure be random, keeping with the theme of your show. I'm now going to choose which one of Sour Apple's reviews I'm going to delve into, completely at random using an online number randomizer. Unlike Sour Apple, who arbitrarily chooses ahead of time what he's going to review, almost always some cartoon. Okay then, so as you can see, here we have Google. I'm just going to type in random number generator. Oops, I mean generator. Alright, we're just going to go the one I already use, random.org. And as there are 12 reviews, I'm going to...
So, but he's putting all of Sour Apple's content into a randomizer to use his own gimmick against him. Then he's going to pick a review at random using this randomizer and then go over it.
Choose a number from 1 through 12 and then count from up to down. Oh, we get number 2. We're going to review the second one down. There you go. Congratulations. So, because the first two aren't actually reviews, we go to this one right here. Let's click, and I guess we're reviewing his dinosaurs review.
Dinosaurs. Now, I imagine it's been a long time since any of you even saw a frame of dinosaurs. Maybe you saw dinosaurs when you were like 5 years old or something, but this is going to take you back in time. This is really going to take you back in time to when dinosaurs was a thing.
As good as review as any. Reviewer is only as good as any of his reviews, so let's review this one.
Hello, chums. To review anything.
The pedanticism of it, you know, is the arm gesture necessary? Sour Apple's purely just trying to create a character that'll take off like the nerd. He's just trying to entertain people. And you've got this well, Ace has come for him, and there ain't going to be no survivors, quite literally in Sour Apple's case. Rest in peace, my friend.
Costume man.
Let's hit the review generator and see what we're analyzing today.
Why bother? It's only going to be another TV show. Wake me up when you review, I don't know, Elvis overdoses or something interesting.
Is that the next show, folks? Do we just review Elvis overdoses? Is that what we do? Is that the next show?
Now, seeing as this thing is a whopping 33 minutes, 25 seconds long, I'm going to spare you the intro, which reads like he was paraphrasing Wikipedia anyway, with some Jim Henson ass-kissing there for good measure. Trust me, you won't miss the generic comments one bit.
Jim Henson was a groundbreaking filmmaker that brought puppetry to new levels.
See?
Now, many people have labeled dinosaurs as a kid's show. Personally, I believe that's not the case. To me, that's a load of poppycock.
It may be a load of poppycock, but it objectively is a kid's show. It's about talking dinosaurs, Sour Apple. It's a kid's show. You know, it may be poppycock, but quite literally it is a kid's show. Just because you're a grown-ass man in your mother's sitting room, dressed like this, it don't make it anything more than a kid's show.
More of a family program.
Huh. I don't remember the mass adult boycotts that surrounded the show.
This takes me
Perhaps you
back,
should talk about
by the way.
that instead. This is your show, Sour Apple. Blanket statements and vanilla commentary that drags on for too long. Much too long.
Vanilla commentary was the antediluvian term for cold take, right? The cold take hadn't been originated yet, so it was all about vanilla commentary.
To amuse children.
Puppetry has often been categorized as something made just for children, which is a ludicrous reputation.
So the parallels, as you saw in the first half of this stream, right, where the guy, NeoJesus, decides to go on a fucking history tour of filmmaking techniques. Well, Sour Apple, in his review of Dinosaurs, the kids' TV show, decides to go on a history tour of puppetry and the techniques of handling a puppet. I shit you not. What has happened is happening now.
For such a gloriously inventive art form.
Oh god, now you're gonna talk about the grand old art of puppetry and why we should all flog ourselves for it not being on the forefront of popular culture. 4 words, dude. Terry Fader, Jeff Dunham.
Let's first discuss the members of the family. There's Earl, the father and husband of the family.
There's Earl, the father and husband of the family. You know how long it's been since I've saw Earl? Probably about 20 years. It's probably about 20 years since I saw Earl, the father and head of the family.
To express racist or sexist prejudice. He's a bit dim, has a bad temper, and has a habit of being lazy.
Yikes, this guy just won't shut up. I'm gonna do us all a favor now and cut it right here, right now.
Based.
In short, this guy never learned to summarize. He talks too much, says too little, and you can find his opinion pretty much anywhere. He's as unique as cornflakes, and that's that. Now, am I...
You know it's over when you've been called as unique as cornflakes. You know it's time to jump off that bridge. You know it's time to put the gun to your head and press the trigger. Unique as cornflakes. Vanilla commentary. It's over. It's done.
Being too harsh? Well, gee, Asa, everything you said sounded really negative. Now, I'd like to stress real quick that I don't hate this guy one bit. I just don't find the appeal to his show. I'm struggling to find exactly who the audience
Sour
is
Apple, by the way, only had like 10 views a video and 48 subscribers when Asa came through.
Sounding like he's an edgy, different kind
Smothered
of
him in the cradle, just like Andy.
That is YouTube at large. They'll just be bored. If you want to sit through long and wordy descriptions of each and every minuscule facet of a TV cartoon and intense overanalyzing of each character, you'll love him. I, for one, tuned him out after a few minutes.
Now, this is all just an opinion. I mean, 48 people can't be wrong, can they? Till next time, dear viewer.
How long was I wearing this mask for? Must have been weeks.
If you pay attention, he's actually holding the Squire mask. He's actually holding the Squire mask.
I've got long hair now. What? Oh, I'm getting rid of you. What are you doing on my crop, you crazy green man?
This, by the way, was the first time anyone had ever played the same character. The same actor had ever played the same character facing the screen on a head-on angle. This was... Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Movie Bob stole his whole shtick from Sour Apple. That's what I'm trying to say. And this was the first time this sort of filmmaking was ever done.
Anyone tell you whose father fakes property?
Oh yeah, one last thing. This guy also has sketches in most of his reviews. Seems you can't avoid this shit. It's like they feel obligated to act.
I always thought Sour Apple looked like Razor Fist. I could be wrong, but maybe people can also see the resemblance.
For you, like it's some sort of biological imperative for reviewers. Okay, till next time, for real now, dear viewer.
And there we go. There we go. Okay. So I hope we've all learned a valuable lesson there. And I hope we've all seen the parallels that I was trying to draw between Sour Apple and NeoJesus. And we've just had a tale delivered to us from the past of how it's truly, truly done. What was I going to end with? Not that. This. Because with these streams, they're not just on the hoof to cover the news that day to make a quick dime. They're written in here. Actual thought goes into what I produce. There's an actual artistic vision. I'm actually writing on the fly. And I don't need Persip, I don't need Brian Dunn, and I don't need the Squire to do it for me. There's creativity. There's mojo. There's a journey I'm taking the fanboys on. It's what it's all about. Because the river, it flows in me. All right, I think we've got enough time for a Q&A, so ask me anything. Time is like a river and history repeats. It does. And when you've been around long enough, it's almost like things haven't changed at all. It's just the faces that have changed. Is your vape box wine flavoured? I wish. You know what? I wish I could get some boxed wine, eh? Some of that dry, powdered, boxed wine. I wish. Who are the new school of Kino? Well, if I told you, you'd ruin it for me. But currently there's a great wealth of content creators out there that are making content exactly the same as this. They don't need OBS and super chats and a weekly show raking over the coals. People who've also been raked over the coals on other weekly shows. There's a great wealth of people that produce good content. What happened to Master Brew? That's a name I've not heard in a long time. I don't know what happened to Master Brew. I met Master Brew. We did a show together. What was it called? We did a show together. We made some content together. He was the co-host before... Who was it? Oh yeah, he was before Harmful Opinions. He was before... God, I'm going back now. But yeah, he was the co-host before PPP, before Harmful Opinions, before fucking... who was that guy called? Horatio Carey. Albion Radio, that's right, yeah. Internet war with NeoJesus. I don't think he's going to put up much of a fight. I mean, if you don't watch this and learn a few lessons, then I don't know what to say. I imagine he'll switch it off because the lighting isn't good and the audio quality's not good and we're not using OBS. Fuck you, NeoJesus, you piece of shit. Gobbleton, what's the best video of all time? Now, if you're a long-term viewer, you know I like Skies of Arcadia, but I went back and played that recently, and it probably has gone down on my list. Still top 5, but it's probably gone down on my list. Best controller of all time. I don't know. I like the GameCube controller. The GameCube controller is pretty good, in my opinion. I'm not, so whenever I do these mobile streams, right, the chat is very obscure and scrolls by too quickly, and I don't get to see messages unless I do this and scroll through, and then I scroll back, and then there's 1,000 more, I'm afraid. So anyone that's desperately trying to ask me a question, do so just repeatedly. Have you seen Cog's new show on Warski? The Kayfabe Casino with Paulie Frog 64? No, I haven't seen it at all. I don't give a shit. Whatever Cog does, it sort of exists in its own phantom zone to me. You know, it's not really not really something I keep an eye on. Do you know what though? That Dan guy, I've got a lot of respect for Dan. Dan runs his own gym and has been trying to get PPP to fly out or something to go to a fight. I mean, that should happen. And I think Dan's the one that attacked Ethan Ralph in the street in Portugal. Paulie Frog is boring. I don't really know who Paulie Frog is. I mean, my exposure to Paulie Frog is, I mean, he was a writer. He was a writer on the Kino Casino. He used to send them loads of clips. I think he was like a big pay pig. Within recent days, I found out he had a drug addiction. And now he's streaming with Cog. That's all we know about Paulie Frog, I'm afraid. Yeah, hats off to Dan. So I watched a bit of a stream that Cog and Dan did. And Dan's basically like a self-made man. He went and did like an NVQ level 3 or something and bought this gym. He actually works hard for his money. Props to Dan, right? Are you Metica Masochist? No, that's Andy's dad, quite clearly. Quite clearly, Metica Masochist is there purely to funnel back through the super chats to make it look more successful than it really is, the Kino Casino. Game of the year. I'm going to give a pleb boomer take, because I've only really played a handful of games, but I really liked Elden Ring. I really liked Elden Ring. Is there any exception for ads on videos? Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I don't mind an advert that plays at the top of the video that I can skip and that's it. Right? I don't mind that. But if the ad keeps popping up throughout a 10-minute video, that's where I draw the line. And you know what? Hindsight's a wonderful thing. I don't necessarily mind. With the rose-tinted glasses that I'm wearing in 2022, I don't necessarily mind that Toad decided to embed a 7-minute Raid Shadow Legends NordVPN ad into his Chris Hansen documentary because at least he allowed you to fucking skip it. I know. Who is the best Superman? Isn't it Christopher Reeve? Like, for sure. And Superman 2 being the best Superman film that there ever has been made? I don't really rate Henry Cavill, I'm afraid. Is there going to be a review on Jim's old content before he caved into the grift? Well, here's the thing with Jim. Jim was never really like Kino Dogme 2007. He never got on camera. He never performed a character. He never really did anything other than just be Jim. Jim, I mean, all we have with Jim is a voice. So it's very hard to do a review of Jim. Dutton stream. Well, Dutton is the spirit of 2007, I'm afraid. Every intro to a Dutton video is amazing. I think I probably only make it into about a minute of the video. The moment he snaps out of character, takes off the wig, takes off the dress, and starts doing some random psycho crazy shit about miscegenation, that's probably when I dip off. When he goes through the PowerPoint on miscegenation, that's when I go, okay, I've had enough. But the first 30 seconds of every Dutton video is fucking gold. Who will go first, Wolski or Antweiler? Well, if you don't know, you should know. Spoonie's renaissance is happening right now. This has been the year of Spoonie. He's making content again. Wolski, I give him till the end of the year. Optimistically, I give him till the end of the year. He might already be dead now. He's not been posting, has he? Someone says, I don't think Dutton believes in free will. Well, I think I believe in free will just simply by watching Dutton and seeing how he's allowed to live his life. Yeah, I believe in free will. Yeah, Spoonie is slowly climbing out of the gutter, and props to the man. It's been a rough few years, but now he's back on the up. Now, he might not go back to the days of the Spoonie experiment and the Final Fantasy reviews and the fucking Ultima reviews, but do you know what? Spoonie's got what it takes within him to build himself back up to something. Because there's more talent in Spoonie's left finger than there is in fucking a litany of other Spoonie clones and people who've tried to snatch his crown over the years. For real. Are perspicacity and Squire forgiven? Time will tell. Currently, we're in limbo on that one. Where is Warski? Well, he's obviously okay, we were going to talk about this on another stream, but we'll go into it now. Fuck it. And we'll do this with... What can we pop up here? We can do red light spells danger, but we might get flagged down. Or we can do a piano version of Frozen Let It Go after this advert plays. After a second advert plays... What? Okay. So, Andy Warski has been radio silent of late. He's not been posting on his Twitter. He's not been on the Kino Casino. But the shadows betray his actions. Because in the shadows, he's blocking accounts on Twitter. Plus ça change. The more things change, the more they stay the same. In the shadows, he's also handling all of the payment processing for the Kino Casino and the Kino Cathedral Gumroad. He wants you to believe he's in rehab, that he's radio silent, that he's getting better, guys, but the reality is he's not. He's still at home, in the office, his dad's office, doing nothing. Blocking people on Twitter. Having mental breakdowns in Discord servers. There's receipts of all of this. Everyone that Andy thinks is his friend is a complete snake, and I love it. If anything, Andy should be surrounded by more snakes who betray all of his confidences. People are saying he'll be back and say he's better. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. But he'll be better when he's 6 feet under, I'm afraid. What's it like being back on YouTube? Well, I hope people appreciate that I've come back with a creative vision. I hope you've all realised that each video follows on from another and carries through the themes that we laid out way back in the summer. Everything in those original two videos that we made, especially the rise and fall of the Kino Casino, all of it has a thread that runs through to this and will run through to future content. Okay, well, let's Q&A Persip as he's in the chat. Question, perspicacity. What's going on behind the scenes? Where was the last show? We'll wait for Persip to respond. Why didn't the show happen last Friday? Eyes on you, Persip. Let's go. He's gone silent. Is he shook? What's going on, Persip? Where was the show? Spill the beans, my friend. There will be no shows with me. Next question. Why? What's happened? You and PPP fallen out? What's gone on? What's happened? Andy will be back, he says. There's just adverts playing. I'm sorry. So Andy will be back? Why? What's happened? Was the plan all along just to have a filler show with yourself to make the audience beg for Andy to come back? What's going on? We need more information. All eyes on Persip, by the way. I couldn't save him, I failed. You couldn't save who? PPP? Was the money too strong? Did he see the show that had happened? Turned on live chat, not top chat. I can't do that on a mobile, can I? You'll just have to keep posting your response until I read it, Persip, I'm afraid. It was too strong. Persip says the desire for money was too strong. So has there been a final conversation with PPP, Persip, where he fired you from the show, or did you walk? That's what you need to know. Were you fired or did you walk? I don't need to spell it out. Well, I hope you appreciate the music we've got in the background, because we need to all know whether your heart will go on. Whether, when Warski fucking goes crazy again and snorts a box of wine on stream, whether you'll come running back and do a show with Ashton again. He says, I'm not doing a show with Warski. So the plan was to have the three of you on the show? Okay, question. Was there actually a show prepped for last Friday? Did you actually prep a show, brief it to PPP? Did he say no? And why? I'm not seeing his response. He says, you know, we'll let the music swell while we read this one. He says, right, you know I love Ashton, but my love for him isn't enough for that level of humiliation. Shall we do Gladiator? Now that the fucking worm has turned and the last of the writers have walked out? I can scarcely believe it, folks. So, Persip, was there actually a show prepared to go live on Friday? Or was the whole... Because here's what I imagined happened. You both did that show. PPP got shook because the chat had turned on him for snaking on Andy, and he decided to drop you from the show, or say that, oh, I want Warski back because he brings in the money. Is that really what happened? Now's your chance to shine, Percy. I hope there's an answer coming. You know the truth in your heart, Adam, so I'm right. I'm right. Now, clearly, it wasn't the best to bring you onto the show, right? Clearly, it looked as though, from an outside perspective, that you were on the show purely to make Andy look good and the audience to beg for Andy to come back. But here's the thing. The audience hated both of you mutually. The audience despised both of you mutually. And the fact of the matter is, when he brings back Warski onto his show, people are going to be calling him a fat snake who knows his place now. Literally the new anal vape. The audience will have completely shot all of their good feeling for PPP. And it very definitely will be Andy's show. Persip says it breaks his heart. Well, there you go. The love of money is strong, I'm afraid. Can you tell me Squire's involvement in all this, Persip, please? Pressing questions that need an answer. Squire has no involvement. You know what? Squire, redeemed. 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 Persip asked him to do the opening. Right. Okay. Okay. I just find it bizarre.
Congratulations on your...
I just find it absolutely bizarre. We're really going to go back to the Kino Casino with Andy Warski and PPP, pretending as though nothing has happened. Hoping that it all goes away. That people will just forget, and that they can pretend on a live stream that Andy's been to rehab because he's been quiet on Twitter. And people won't actually see the truth that he's been blocking people on Twitter. And handling all of the money. If PPP just waves a shiny thing on the Kino Cathedral, then it'll all be okay. I don't even know what the fuck this is. Maybe we'll try this one. Hire War Corpse as the co-host. Yeah. Persip says time to move on and keep on trucking. Persip's heart will no longer go on. Dearie me. Back to Nick and Ralph, don't you know it, folks? Back to Nick and Ralph content, ad infinitum. Are they waiting for No Ralph November to end, Persip, or are they back next week? Are they back this Friday, even? Because you know what? I'm not afraid to take a stand. Who knows? Who knows, Persip says. So that explains to me that Persip's been kicked out of the inner circle. And we're back to Christorian X and the Kinocopter writing the show. Have you got any more juicy details to drop, Persip? Or have you dropped your mic? Persip staying silent. His mic has been dropped. Well, hopefully we can get it. Oh, he says, no, I moved on. It's clear that PPP has his own ideas on what he wants. I'm breaking out of this cage. So Persip can't talk bad about Warski on the casino. Are they the new ground rules? We can't talk bad about Warski on the Kino Casino? Dearie me. Dearie me, folks. Well, that was an unexpected snakeling that we had at the tail end of this stream. But I hope there's enough there to sort of carry on the next few storylines. Because whilst I try and process all of this, we'll be probably back for the stream snipe, eh? We'll be back for the stream snipe when they put their show together. And we really will deliver the fire this time. It will be true scorched earth. Just like the antediluvian kings used to do. Watch the skies, folks. Believe in the bumblebees and the black oil virus. And above all, trust no one. No half measures.